Welcome back to the Explainer series, everyone. Now, in part one, we unpacked how the EU plans to manage that absolute flood of small parcels through some pretty massive digitization. But today we're diving right into part two, and we're looking at a very specific and frankly completely fascinating special case. We are talking about the massive digital struggle surrounding e-commerce in the Canary Islands. Okay, let's dive right into this because there is this incredibly logical, but unfortunately completely false assumption out there. Let's go ahead and call it the canary fallacy. A lot of people think, hey, if the entire EU is digitizing customs anyway, won't it finally be easier to order packages to the Canaries? They just assume that digitizing customs simply means adding another little tax percentage to the checkout page, right? Well, that's exactly what we're unpacking right now. Is it really just about a simple tax rate? Look, for the vast majority of us, online shopping is a really relaxing experience. A few clicks and boom, your package is magically on its way. But ask literally anyone who lives on the islands or spends the winter down there. For them, clicking buy currently feels a lot more like a high-stakes game of customs roulette. It is absolutely no wonder that residents are just desperately hoping this big 2026 customs reform is going to finally bring them the ultimate solution. And honestly, the thought makes total sense. Every EU country has its own VAT rate anyway, right? In Germany, it's 19%. In Sweden, it's 25%. So you naturally think the Canaries just land on this new digital EU customs list as another normal tax rate. Well, unfortunately, the answer to that is a pretty hard no. It definitely doesn't happen automatically. Geographically and politically, yes, the islands are clearly part of the EU customs territory. But, and this is a really huge but, they are entirely excluded from the harmonized EU VAT area. That means the normal European VAT simply doesn't apply there. Instead, they have their very own local tax called the IGIC. And honestly, that fundamental difference right there, that's the absolute root of the whole problem. So why exactly is this such a massive technological hurdle? To really diagnose the clash that's causing all these current e-commerce failures, let's look under the hood for a second. We are dealing with two completely different digital worlds here. And this brilliantly illustrates where the real mess lies. The EU mainland uses what's called the iOS system. Now, this was built specifically to collect VAT for small consignments fully automatically, literally right at the exact moment you hit purchase. The Canary Islands, on the other hand, use a completely independent, entirely separate system called Wexcunt, or WXCK, to process their local IGIC tax. And folks, there is the digital bottleneck. These two systems, by their very nature, simply do not communicate with each other. It's like they speak completely different languages. A shopping platform can't just reuse its existing European IT infrastructure and say, great, now we can deliver smoothly to the islands with this. No way. For the data to actually flow, these platforms have to program entirely new technical bridges totally from scratch. So let's look at how the major platforms are reacting to this problem right now. The current e-commerce situation is, to put it mildly, quite a mess. AliExpress, for example, is really trying. They attempt to push the data over digitally, but in practice, they constantly fail just due to poor data quality. Shein does deliver, but ultimately, they just push all the complicated customs processing right onto the buyer. And Temu, well, they are currently backtracking massively. They're actually blocking rows of Canary Island postcodes from getting direct deliveries altogether. And even though things are constantly shifting, the basic problem for the locals remains completely annoying. When the digital data fails on its way from the platform to the Canary Wexcunt system, the package just gets stuck, stone cold. Enter the dreaded auto-dispatcho. What this means, in plain language, is that the entire agonizing burden of manual clearance lands directly on your shoulders as the receiver, not to mention all the unpredictable extra costs that come with it. Okay, so let's pivot here and look to the future. What exactly happens after this massive reform kicks in 2026? How is this going to reshape the entire future of island deliveries? Well, based on how the platforms react, there are really two highly realistic futures that we are heading toward. Depending entirely on how the global platforms respond, we are looking at two vastly different paths. Let's compare Scenario A, which involves heavy investment and seamless delivery, right up against Scenario B, which involves market withdrawal and a return to expensive middlemen. Let's start with Scenario A, which is what we're calling the game changer. This is where the really big platforms say, okay, you know what, the Canary market is important enough to us. So they spend the money and they build exactly this modern IT architecture they need to dock cleanly and flawlessly with the WXTK system. If they actually make this major IT investment, I mean, it would be a true game changer for the people on the islands. Just imagine it. Highly accurate data, hardly any annoying questions from customs, and a fully automated, hassle-free home delivery process right to your front door. But we also absolutely have to talk about scenario B, and this carries some stark warnings. This is the risk. Here, the global platforms do the math and come to the conclusion, phew, completely rebuilding our global systems for such a small, specialized market, that's just way too expensive for us, and the risk of errors is way too high. If the major players shy away from this effort, it is going to get uncomfortable. We could really see more retailers simply bailing out and stopping their deliveries to the Canaries altogether, or suddenly expensive third-party providers return as middlemen, and you are right back to filling out endless manual forms yourself for every single little package you order. So, the crucial point is, who is ultimately responsible for all of this? This brings us to, honestly, the most important takeaway of this whole analysis. The 2026 reform shifts the total legal and logistical responsibility directly onto the shoulders of the platforms. For you, the buyer, this means in concrete terms, whether your shopping arrives smoothly or ends in absolute customs chaos will in the future depend almost entirely on the technological capabilities of your chosen platform. There is a sentence that perfectly sums this all up, and I really want you to remember this. The question isn't what you bought, but who you bought from. It's not at all about the specific product inside your box anymore. It is literally only about whether the shop successfully built that invisible digital bridge between Europe and the Canary Islands. It's going to be absolutely fascinating to watch how giants like Amazon, AliExpress, or Temu position themselves moving forward. Will the internet giants step up to build this digital bridge, or will island shoppers be left behind in the e-commerce dark ages? Now I am genuinely curious. What is your Canary delivery experience? Have things gone smoothly for you, or have you experienced the full customs drama? Please let us know your stories in the comments below. And hey, be sure to join us for part 3 of this Explainer series, where we're going to answer the exciting question of who actually walks away from this massive reform as the ultimate winners and losers. Until then, thanks so much for tuning in, and good luck with your next online shopping trip.